Russian forces have been digging in around Bakhmut, trying to seize the surrounding villages. But what exactly does their digging in look like? And what are the Ukrainian forces doing about it? Leaked combat footage from the front gives us a window into just what that looks like. Let's get into it. And first off, to the YouTube censors, guys, I checked. This is in compliance. Nobody gets hurt. But if you are interested in seeing the most intense combat footage I can find away from YouTube censors, become a member of the Patreon. Those guys are a huge supporter of the channel, and they let me continue to do this even as YouTube starts to crack down on footage. Let's do that. All right, so you can see what I think is fascinating is these are some of the most elaborate earthworks we've seen. You can see here, there's actually 4 separate entrances. Now, what I can't tell is if these are actually bunkers, if these are machine gun positions, and that this is the exterior line of the trench. But I actually think that because drones are such a threat now, I think these are actually more like tunnel networks. And the interesting thing is that you obviously have these entrances that constitute good fighting positions, and you can see they've got some overhead cover. And what I think actually is that these are functionally tunnel networks. Right? You can see it looks like these guys are really living in these trenches. And look at this dude. Look at this dude. He's in a puddle. It's like waist deep. I'm just going to point out that standing water like this is a massive liability for health and safety. The reason is obviously because bacteria thrives in wet conditions. And once you get it on yourself, that water, I mean, you all know how uncomfortable it gets when your skin gets wet and it just stays that way. But what makes it so dangerous is that when you get water, say in your boots or in areas of your skin where they rub together, is that it produces chafing and allows bacteria to enter your bloodstream to get under the protective outer layer of skin. And it can cause all sorts of infections. It can cause staph and MRSA. You also have issues where it can freeze the extremities, fingers and toes, and it can produce like trench foot, another sort of, I guess it's like sort of necrotizing. But the point is, staying dry is one of the most important things you can do in these kind of wet and cold conditions. So the fact that this person's like not even trying is kind of bananas. But wait, let's back it up a sec, right? And so it's got some, so I want to look at the larger picture here. Right, you can see that there is, it looks like grassland here, and then you notice that it looks as though this is actually mostly enclosed. And so what I think the Russians have actually done is used sticks to create lots of overhead cover around their trenches so that there's very limited areas overhead that are exposed, right? And so this way, if drones attempt to strike this trench to drop their small explosives on it, they'll just detonate ineffectually over top in this dirt. And you only need maybe 8 inches of dirt over some sticks to constitute a roof that can at least hold up to a small hand grenade type explosion. 8 inches of dirt will also offer some level of protection against even artillery shells and anything other than maybe a direct hit. So again, if it says that they have a lot of time, that they're able to build this fully enclosed fighting position, but it can also be sort of a trap, right? As you guys can see, there's only really 3 ways out of here. But it's a trade-off that's worth it given the amount of casualties Russians seem to have taken from the drones. And despite the fact that these are a lot of newly mobilized conscripts, this is the first time I've seen Russian forces really work to counter overhead drones in their fortification system. Okay, so there's obviously Ukrainian forces who have started to dial in this position, and they're putting indirect fire onto it. But as you guys can see, oh, yeah, exactly. Zoom it back a little bit. I mean, you guys can see here just how invisible that is. I actually at first didn't even think this was a fighting position at all. But you can see they're putting rounds almost directly onto it. But like we said, with this overhead cover, it's really, they're not in that considerable a danger. Again, they're continuing to try and put rounds into this, but this is a really strong fortification. The problem is, of course, that the Russians have, there's a couple. First, as you can see here, if there's water pooling here, there's almost certainly water pooling inside this below ground fighting structure. Second is if they want to actually advance and take territory, they're going to have to leave this structure behind. So all this can be a liability as much as it is an asset. But it's just proof that, when we talk about the World War I style tactics or the World War Ification of this conflict, well, this is what we're talking about. World War I was famous for the fact that defensively, it was very, very hard to to dig out your enemy, right, from defensive positions. But in contrast, being a defender and holding territory was extremely, extremely not easy, but the advantage was so heavy for the defender. And I think that's what we're seeing in this war as well. Obviously, Ukraine has an intrinsic advantage because they are defending their territory, right? It's Russia who needs to continue to push and annex. And as long as Russia tries to go on the offensive, Ukraine is going to be able to dig their own fortifications like this that are equally impenetrable. Again, I mean, you guys can see here that while the forward observers know this area is occupied, they can put rounds on it, but it's just not clear that it delivers any kind of real combat result. I mean, you see the same thing I do. The entrances aren't collapsed. There's not really any evidence that these guys are being hurt or injured. And so it's a testament to just how fast this has evolved and how sometimes you have to look to the past to counter the threats of the present. And in building these what are basically underground tunnel systems, the Russian forces have done exactly that. That's all I had for you guys. Of course, check the description for the Patreon. There's so much content there already, and I drop new content every week. Thanks to my Lieutenant tier patrons. You guys make this whole thing possible. See y'all in the next one.